Welcome to the Motivation Without the Hype podcast with your host, Gez Perez. He's an author, high-performance coach, and motivational speaker. This show brings you inspiring messages and interviews to unleash your greatness in life and in business. So let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to Motivation Without the Hype podcast show. My name is Gez Perez, a former procrastinator into an action taker. We bring you inspirational messages and interviews, including motivational insights, tips, principles, and proven strategies that you can take action without the hype in unleashing your greatness in life and in business. Now, we appreciate you plugging in and spending time with us, and we have a very special guest all the way from the USA, and I'm very, very grateful to have him on our show. Now, his name is Dustin. He's been living and breathing software development for over 20 years. He is a co-founder of Caffeine Interactive Technologies, an agency that focuses on planning strategies and architecture, ensuring that software implementations are straightforward based on clear ways to architecture, ensuring that software implementations are straightforward based on clear ways to measure success. Now, he enjoys working with clients to build the right technology, whether it's a web application framework like Django and NodeJS, or a simple CMS solution like WordPress. He received his Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering from Texas A&M University. Now, Dustin is proud to work with talented offshore business analysts and developers. He's a solopreneur and has grown his company based on a 100% remote team. That's amazing, which has been thriving for the last 8 years. Now, his spare time, Dustin enjoys reading, gardening, cooking, playing guitar, running, and hanging out with his family. He believes that a work-life balance is essential to operate a business, to overcome adversities, and find a bigger purpose in life. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jess. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, you've got a wonderful resume, tons of experiences that we can learn from today. Now, please tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I think the bio summed up pretty well, but I mean, basically we help people solve problems through software through our company. And, I'm co-founder here at Caffeine Interactive. We're a husband and wife founded company with a team of almost 20 employees. We have a global team as well. And yeah, just living the dream, so to speak, running a business and trying to keep my head on straight and find time for the family and find time for, other obligations and keep some balance in life, I guess.
So you started Caffeine with your wife. So how did that all come about?
Well, so I've been in software for the last 20 years, even before that, because I was into software and development back when I was in high school. So over 20 years now. My wife, she's also been in software as well, but not so much on the development side, more on the requirements, and she's been a product manager in former life before we started Caffeine Interactive. So we had really good synergy. For some reason, for the first 10 years, maybe we were smart about this and stayed sane. We decided not to work together and live together. We decided to just choose one, and we chose live together and then work together. And then after 10, 11 years, we're like, maybe we could make something out of this, So we decided to combine forces, I guess. And it works out well because she's great at really defining projects and really understanding scope and what needs to be done, really all those pieces. And then I'm, try to do a good job at putting it all together.
And that's really good to have a husband and wife duo and to really understanding clear definitions and role descriptions and get that clarity around that. And that's why you work so well over the last many, many years that you've been working together. What's the goals for you guys coming up?
We're a growing business, just continuing to grow. There's a lot of things just logistically within the business that we're focused on, but if I think kind of bigger goals, I think it's really just continue that growth. We're really based around, a service-based model. So it's building apps and solutions for our customers, but we'd like to build some products ourselves, and so that's something that as we look down the road, something we're kind of doing. I think a model we have always sort of emulated, or I thought was a good model to try to emulate, is the Basecamp model and what they did. They were a services-based company, and they came out with some of these or I'm sorry, it's 37 Signals, I think is the company's name, but they're the ones who invented Basecamp and a few other products like that. They were a services-based company. Now, necessity, they started building some tools for their own needs for what they did, and now they're basically a product company. And I kind of like that. But I really love services too, so I don't know that we'd ever completely move away from services like they did.
Yeah, so you're an advocate for work-life balance, and again, having your wife and your family involved, you're an advocate for this. Why is it to have that in order to succeed in business, in life, and family?
I just think that if you get too drained with one, I always think of them as buckets. So if you get too drained with one of those or multiple of those, even worse, then it really affects your performance in the other. So, I think sometimes things like, people divided into different buckets. I've seen people come up with like 7, 8, 10 buckets that you call these things, but I think of it more as 4, maybe 5, but 4 I usually think of are like spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional buckets. And so wanting to feed all of those. And so you probably throw a relational one in there too, your relationships with your family and friends. And so wanting to keep all that balanced. And I think, for example, if you're not exploring, your emotions and maybe spirituality, that affects your creativity. So when it comes to the work that you do on a day-to-day basis, if you're not having other outlets for that to exercise that, I think it really affects your performance. And so I think even if you think of it strictly from a selfish thing, wanting to be successful at business, I think it's very important to have that balance.
Wow. For someone who has a challenge with work-life balance, because they don't know how to balance the buckets, as you mentioned, what would be your strategies in helping someone to overcome this type of challenges, particularly with this?
Yeah. Well, I have to laugh because I definitely don't consider myself an expert. Something I struggle with every day. I don't know anyone who's really good at it. I mean, there probably is someone out there. They're selling books and making a lot of money off of it, I guess. But for me, it's tough. It really is. I think one of the things that I learned over the years from talking to people, and I had someone that gave me some advice once, and basically I was going through a tough time with work, and I was just going crazy. There was huge, requirements and deadlines and stuff that I was trying to meet. And I was like, I don't see how I can do this and still have time for my family. And, he told me, well, maybe you need to give yourself permission to borrow from the other buckets to go deal with this fire and put it out. And then you make sure you take time after that to come back and recharge those other buckets. And I thought, that's an interesting model. I think a lot of times we get caught up with wanting to have work-life balance on a daily basis. And I think maybe giving yourself permission to say, I'm not going to worry about it on a daily basis. Maybe I'll try for a weekly basis. Certainly a monthly basis, you should try to have that. But, if you have a day that's just chaotic and you're working for 12 hours and you come home and you have no time for your family and you just need to go get in a room by yourself and recover, then that's just the way it is, right? And then the next day you make up for that, or sometime later in the week. And I think that's been valuable, because think about balance. It's not meticulously managing it on a daily basis, but looking more at the longer term trends, I guess.
And I think that's really important, right? Is the priorities. What is your priority? And I think people say, well, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for family. I'm just run down with so much overwhelm with work or with business. But it's always making that choice. It's all about making priority. And to hear from you and to see as well that you're not only that you're a family man, but you make this as a priority. Yes, work is work or business is business. But when it comes to family, I'll make time for it. And I think that's really important. How did you make that decision when that you just said that you've been working a lot with requirements and deadlines and scoping and to make sure that you meet certain time frames, but yet you said, you know what, I'm going to leave it at the door. It's time for family. I can always deal with that. How did you make that decision? Because sometimes for other people, it's really hard for them. It's, and as you said, it's easy said and done, but there's certain ways or some small habits that they can start implementing. What would be those small incremental habits that people can start taking action right now?
I think you have to be intentional about it. I think that would be number one. You have to just set the time aside. And that doesn't mean you're perfect on it. Sometimes there is an emergency, a crisis that you have to go deal with, and you have to interrupt things. But for the most part, you have to be intentional. But I think that also ties into why we started building a business, because I was doing some freelance consulting before we started building a team. And so I was kind of dealing with this where I had started building up some customers and, building kind of critical mass with that. And then suddenly I'm overflowing with too much work, not enough ways to deal with it. And so then I have to think about, okay, well, how do I handle this? And the way I handled it, of course, was to start adding some other people to help me and building a team. And I think you can do the same thing when you look at your life and you think you're too busy. Figuring out what things you can outsource. I mean, I had this debate with a friend of mine. It was an interesting debate. You know, he's a big advocate of like outsourcing everything. He's like, I buy stuff from, I know you're over in Australia. Assuming you've heard of IKEA, maybe not.
Yeah, we have IKEA.
Yeah. IKEA's there. Okay.
We've got Amazon now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and like IKEA, he was talking about that. He's like, I won't even put together IKEA furniture. He's like, my wife buys something from IKEA. I won't assemble it. I hire someone off of, I forget the website he uses, but I was just like, wow, like it just, that's a crazy mentality. And I've heard other people do that. And it's like, that's, he may be at the extreme, but also he's devoting all of his time to the things that he wants to do. And he's alleviated all those or gotten rid of all those other things that are in the way that are distractions or that suck up his time. I think that's big. And just staying on top of it. I mean, knowing what you need to do. I think I try to start every day with a to-do list, and I put the most important things at the top. I try to knock those things out first. Sometimes organized by difficulty. I like to do my hardest things at the beginning of the day because that's when I'm usually the freshest. My brain is good. And if I can get through those quickly, then if I can build time, if I can create more time by being more efficient, then that's good too.
Yeah, and that's really important, right? Is to do those incremental habits, is to tackle the hard. Like Brian Tracy says, eat that frog, right? You got to eat that first, and that's where your energy is most invested in, because whether you're a morning person, you operate at a higher level. It's like, okay, I'm gonna use this energy to tackle the hard ones first, because I know that the easy ones are my natural giftings. Like, it's just easy peasy Japanesey, right? So so how is your personal freedom right now in your business, has reflected on those values that you drive?
I think it's probably, the thing about that, I think it's probably just from being more goal oriented in terms of how we manage employees and expectations. If someone needs babysitting, then they're not a good fit for what we do on our team, because we give people a lot of freedom and flexibility with the expectation that, we're going to assign tasks and projects and we have things going on and we're all dependent on each other. So we all need to complete those things on time. And we realize things slip sometimes, so we build slack into our schedules intentionally because of that. But at the end of the day, expectations are everyone's dependent on each other and we all have to work together. And so doing that versus like going and making sure if someone is, we're remote, as you alluded to at the beginning of this, going and checking that we use tools like Slack to communicate. So making sure everybody's logged in on Slack and checking if the little light next to their name is on or not. Like, I don't get into that. It's more about, did you get your stuff done that you were supposed to this week? And, what do we need to do to facilitate that?
Like when you talk about technologies and projects, I'm a geek over that, talking to my team, hey, what have you done yesterday? What are you planning to do today? And, if there's any impediments or blockers that we need to address and things of that nature, which I geek out about. In terms of businesses, technology is always adapting. It's changing. You came at a pivotal right time where you're actually ahead of everybody else when it comes to running a business, pivoting a business, and because of some circumstances from earlier on. But you realize earlier on how important it is to really outsource and to work remotely. So, can you just share us your journey and how you shifted as a business model to run remotely 100% in your business, where some people are still thinking about maybe it could be there for them?
And first off, I'll say, I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. It definitely is for me, the way I'm built. I'm more of an introvert anyways. So, the idea of being able to, like, it used to drive me crazy going into the office every day and just realizing how much waste there was, because I have people stopping by my desk throughout the day. Yeah. Sometimes it's work related. Sometimes it's just
coffee. Oh, but I've got something today.
yeah. Talking sports. It's something, it's always something like that. And then just the whole process of like driving to work, driving home, depending on where you live, you hear about these people who spend 2 hours in the car each day driving. So, it's been big for me. I think I realized early on that, getting back to that work-life balance thing, right? I mean, I guess just having this conversation with you is making me realize how much work-life balance has dictated other aspects of my life. Maybe I haven't thought about before, because that was huge to me. I wanted that work-life balance. I wanted to have more time, and I thought, well, how can I create more time? Well, maybe if I can eliminate the hour in a car each day, that's one thing I can do. eliminate the distractions where I can just sit down, what I could do in 4 hours in the office, or what I could do in 8 hours in the office, I can do in 4 hours at home. And even more efficiently than that, because I've got everything positioned the way I want. I've got my workplace set up the way I want to. And having that freedom and flexibility just makes me so much more efficient. So we do the same thing. Our employees try to give them that freedom and flexibility as well. And but again, I say that's a model that works for us. A model that works for me. A model that works for everyone on our team. It's not a model that works for everyone. And I actually applaud anyone who can recognize that in themselves, especially this day and age where everyone's, it's COVID, everyone's work from home. Like I know a guy who he says, I still go in the office like multiple times a week, even though the rest of our team is working remote and I could work remote. I still go in the office because I can't work out of my house. I'm like, good for you. Like you actually recognize that and you found out what makes you the most efficient. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I like how you touch that because there are people who are wired differently and we're not all the same. Like whether you're introvert, extrovert, whether you love being in a office setting where you kind of operate at a higher level, or you are comfortable at home because we all live in different circumstances in situations where I've got a family at home, so it's great to be working from home, or I may be single, so maybe having this balance of going to the office, but at the same token, it's what you really want, and that is time, right? And I think you really hit the nail in the coffin where I'm doing a work-life balance because I want more time. And the only way I can do this is to alleviate. That's what you said, about alleviate some certain tasks. So when it comes to, selection process, we'll talk about deeply a bit shortly on remote business. But how did you select the right people into your business to work remotely with you? Because obviously you're not there physically, you're remotely and virtually. So how did you go through the selection process in getting the right people into the business in the right fit for your culture?
Yeah, it's difficult. I can't say that it's an easy process. We've tried to streamline it. Just, as I mentioned, trying to automate things. I've tried to find processes to put in place where we can have a better idea about someone before we go and extend an offer to them. And so, but there's a few strategies there. Like one, if we have a potential candidate that can actually work on a trial basis, where maybe we pay them hourly for a month or two and then bring them on full time. That always works out well. If it's a situation where we do this quite often, where in our interview process, especially with developers, we'll go through and talk with them, and at the end of it, we'll actually give them a small project and we'll pay them for it and everything. We don't expect them to do this for free as part of the interview process. We actually give them a project and ask them, to track their time on it, and tell them they can bill us for the project, and just kind of see how things go from there. So that's, those are some strategies we've employed to try to find people that work well. And then also just asking questions, finding out a little bit, trying to assess their personality. I'm a big believer in also, like for myself, like intuition, and trying to use that to gauge things. I think it was Steve Jobs who would like make a decision on whether he was going to hire someone within like a minute or two of meeting them. It's like, and maybe that's a little extreme, but I try to, I think your intuition's telling you something. You don't want to get, my problem is I probably trust it a little too much sometimes, but I think it is good to trust that to some extent. I've been the other extreme where everything is telling me this is wrong, and I'm like, but like logically it all seems to be making sense. Yeah, my brain's telling me something different, but I can't really quantify it. Yeah, let's try this, and then it blows up in my face. And so you just, I think every person's going to be different on that, and so you just have to learn from those mistakes and recalibrate each time.
That's awesome. And again, you go with your gut. However, you've done everything you can in terms of streamlining your business, working remotely and hiring the right type of people. What about the organization in terms of, you mentioned about collaboration tools such as Slack. Are there any tools that you use to have your team uplifted so they can operate where they need to operate that provides value, not just wastage of time?
We do. Slack's definitely a big one. We use tools like Teamwork, which is similar to Basecamp, for collaborating. That's a lot. We do some internal collaboration in that tool, but also with our customers, collaborating with them. Since we're a software company, we use Jira for all of our processes. That's all of our,
how awesome is Jira?
Yeah.
Sorry, man. Sorry, guys. If you're listening to this podcast show, And you're hearing, what's this Jira? What's this Slack? Guys, it's awesome. Just Google it. I won't have time for it, but these type of tools to help you really, eliminate wastage of time and really be more productive at the short time frame that you have. That's awesome.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And
See, we vibe, man. We vibe.
We do, yeah, I think so, yeah. And I think Jira Atlassian is an Australian company, right? So,
it is, yeah.
they're doing good stuff there, for sure. They're taking over the world.
So Jira, that's awesome. So, for someone who is a solopreneur or a service-based entrepreneur, and you're wanting to expand, businesses of that nature, people who are thinking right now, man, I think this is great. This is a new thing for me, and it's something that I want to aspire. For people who are listening who are wanting to be aspiring entrepreneurs or who are currently entrepreneurs but really want to outsource and expand their business through this type of model, what would be their first step that they need to take?
I would say, think of a few things, but I think the one that stands out to me is, and I get this from the book Outliers, the Malcolm Gladwell book, if you're familiar with that one, but he talks about people who are successful, and talks about like how, you quantify certain things. Like he talks about IQ and things like that in the book, but say if you're a software developer, it's competency. So there's a certain level of competency you need to have in order to build a certain type of product. So if you're building websites for people, say WordPress websites, you need to be fairly familiar with WordPress. Yeah, there's some really like badass, amazing WordPress developers, and there's some that are just good enough to get by. You probably want to be closer to the expert level, but at some point there's like a law of diminishing returns. A guy that's maybe a 9 out of 10 on the scale for WordPress versus a guy who's a 10 out of 10, they could probably build, either of those two guys could probably build the same website equivalently in the same amount of time, probably pretty close. It would be the extreme stuff that one guy might do better than the other. So there's kind of this concept of like being good enough at what you do, like a minimum requirement, so to speak, with skill set. And then everything else about success is really based around the intangibles, like how well you work with people, how well you communicate. As a company, we have a lot of projects we build from scratch, but we have a surprising number of projects that we inherit that were built by other teams or partially built by other teams. The relationship fell apart or the team didn't meet their needs. And, I really feel like a large part of the failures that I see with projects aren't because of a lack of, there's definitely some that are from lack of competency. I don't want to misrepresent this, but a lot of those are just because of miscommunication and people not going out and taking pride, going out over communicating, really looking at what they do as being, service based in terms of with the customer. And so if you can build that kind of mentality into your business, I think that goes a lot farther than being the greatest WordPress developer, in the world, because I think that you will, this is like the idea behind the mad genius who knows how to do everything, but he's not able to sell it, kind of thing. And like, you've got to have you have to be flexible there. And I think, the other thing too is to realize if you're in business for yourself, if you're going to try to build an agency, you're going to try to build a product or anything like that. Like I was reading a book, I can't remember the name of the book offhand, but talking about selling and marketing. And, the main thing that I took away from that was like, if let's say you're a chef and you really create amazing food, you think of yourself as a chef. The minute you open a restaurant, you're no longer a chef who creates amazing food. You're a restaurant owner who sells amazing food, right? And there's a big distinction there. You do have to sell. And so that's one thing I've resisted against because I'm a developer and like I'm an introvert, like sit in my coding cave and just code away and do my thing and sit on Slack and talk to people. And, if someone calls me on the phone, I'm like, oh, why is my phone ringing? And realizing that as a business owner, I gotta get out and sell. That's just part of my job. And so since I've embraced that, I think it's been a game changer for me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dustin, because it's really important. Like as a business owner and entrepreneur, you may be a fantastic operator, but the elements of missing as an entrepreneur itself of that hat, because if you what's that book? The EMyth, right? The EMyth book about the three types of hats. You got the operator, the manager, and the entrepreneur. And entrepreneur is all about the vision and selling and marketing, while we leave the experts to do running, churning out the tasks. And that's where you have the team. And I think that's really important as well. We have to also do the selling and marketing, because if you don't sell, nothing's coming in, right? But at least when you have that mindset and you've got a supporting team who are really great in their skill set, and you combine that, then it just becomes more magic. And I think that's really important, to be competent, to set some goals and have some clear distinctions as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the cool thing though, I think, is that if you are good at what you do, and maybe you're not strong at selling like me, well, what I did is I worked on, again, those intangibles, the relationships, and building good relationships with people. And so as a result, we were able to build our business organically just through referrals. I think even today, I would say overwhelming majority of our business comes through the referral channels. It's all because we built that reputation with people versus going out and, marketing is always good, because when you're doing your own marketing, then if you do it right, in theory, you should be able to have a spigot you can turn on when you want to, and the new leads come in, you can turn it off when you get too much work. You don't have that flexibility with referrals, but when you're just starting out, that's one of the greatest things you can do to go from, where you are to building at least a small team and getting going. And then from there, you start dialing in the marketing and sales stuff. I mean, you can do it earlier, of course, but that was just from our experience, what I noticed.
Now, and that's really key to getting started, is to build quality relationships, because those relationships will come out to becoming your business advocates. They're going to be your evangelists in your business. If you, commit and deliver, but over deliver of their expectations, then you create that experience. And I think that's what you've done with your clients, and that's what you've done with relationships, is you deliver not just on time, but with quality. It's like that wow factor experience. And I think that's why your company has gone through, many, many years of operations in your business, which is fantastic. Now, Dustin, I ask this question to every guest, and it is, what is your meaning of motivation without the hype? And how to use motivation for your personal success?
So to me, I think without the hype, I think that, there's a certain element, I've seen this from a lot of people who start businesses, get into new ventures. There's a lot of excitement and energy around it at first. And so, but I think that often wears off. And I've heard former presidents here in the U.S. talk about this, where there's the luster of being president of the United States, being the, as we refer to it over here, no offense, most powerful man in the world, right? And so,
that's what they always say.
But then once you get that position, it's then you've got all of the responsibilities and all the things that sort of suck about the job, and it wears off really fast. You get on Air Force One or whatever and have your state dinners at the White House. It's really fancy, but then you realize, I got a lot of stuff I got to take care of, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not fun. And so how do you manage that? So I think that's important, is just being realistic about that. And I think also follow, if you're realistic about that, as you follow your passion, as you follow whatever it is you want to do. I'm trying to remember I keep referencing books I can't remember the names of, but there was one book I was reading where a guy was talking about how he, in high school, he wanted to be a rock musician. But then he was smart enough to realize, as he was thinking about that what was with that? Well, it's traveling all the time, constantly promoting yourself, living on the road. And he realized that wasn't really something, he wanted the luster of it, of performing in front of a bunch of people and everybody worshiping him and singing along with the songs. You want to be Bono standing up on the stage in front of 100,000 plus people, but he didn't want to do go through all the sacrifices with that were involved to reach that point. We probably would never reach that point, but even to be a moderately successful musician would be really, really painful. And I think that's important, to just recognize, not just look at the really happy parts of it, but take the whole thing into account. And I'll get slack for this. People will disagree with me, and that's fine. I'm not one of these people that's big proponent of if you do something you really enjoy, then you never have to work a day in your life. I think work is still work. I think there's things I enjoy a lot. I like to cook, but if I was a chef, I think I would hate cooking. And so I would never go into a profession that was something I loved like that, because I think it would it would ruin that experience for me. But also I recognize I'm kind of an outlier on that sort of stuff. I'm not a normal person on that. And other people do that, and I'm actually jealous of those people. That's probably why, if you hear any like envy in my voice, that's probably why, because I'm actually jealous of people who are able to do that. So software was a good balance for me because I like it, and I'm passionate about it, but it's something I can relate to, and I put it in that job bucket. I'm happy doing it every day, and it's fun. We enjoy helping people, so it's worked out well.
Yeah, it's a good balance, plus life, plus work, plus family. Dustin, thank you for your authenticity, like just being you, being open and honest. And I think a lot of people, we need that around the world is, we need to be upfront of who we are, what we're capable of. And I love it. This is great. So thank you so much, Dustin. Yeah, I appreciate it. So guys, for more information and how you can get in touch with Dustin, now all the links are provided on the show notes. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, really take this opportunity to really get into the show notes, click the link, and I'm telling you right now, go to caffeineinteractive.com. You're able to see all the work that Dustin does. It's fantastic. So if this episode has been helpful and uplifting, we would love for you to write a review to inspire more listeners to get plugged in. We will continue to provide high value content in each and every episode. Now, if you don't mind sharing this podcast show on social media by inviting others, it would mean the world to me. Every time you tag me, we will get the opportunity to share those posts, and together we can make a difference in the lives of others through inspiration episodes just like this. So there you have it. In closing, continue to unleash your greatness and tell yourself that I can, I will, and I must, and we'll see you on the next episode.